only 17 minutes after voting closed in the May 9, 2022 elections, the transparency servers showed its first count, involving some 1.5 million votes. But a time and motion analysis of the tasks that the election boards must complete, including printing out 8 copies of the election return, shows that the process takes at least 19 minutes, perhaps half an hour. How is it possible for vote counting machines from an estimated 2,000 or so clustered precincts to transmit their results in 17 minutes or less? Regardless of how you voted, we should all agree that this is a valid, legitimate question. When it comes to the May 2022 elections, there are other equally valid questions. Good evening. I'm John Nery, and you are in the public square. It has taken several months before the very serious questions raised by the so-called Truth and Transparency Trio, or TNT Trio, gained traction in the public discourse. The trio, consisting of former DICT Chief Eliseo Rio, former COMELEC Commissioner and Namfrel Chair Gus Lagman, and former FINEX President Franklin Ysaac, has tried all remedies, including petitioning the Supreme Court, to get answers. We are joined tonight by one of the leaders of the trio. Retired Army General Eliseo Rio is a licensed electronics and communications engineer. He served as Commissioner of the National Telecommunications Commission under President Arroyo, and as Secretary and then as Undersecretary and then as Acting Secretary of the Department of Information and Communication Technology under President Duterte. Good evening, Secretary Rio, and thank you for joining us in the public square.
Good evening, John, and thank you for inviting me to your program.
Thank you, Sec Eli. I've been meaning to talk to you for the last several weeks. I'm glad that we finally have this chance. Let me start by asking you, what's the latest when it comes to your advocacy?
Okay, thank you, John. Well, the latest is our analysis of the so-called transmission logs that was uploaded to the website of COMELEC, covering all the data that the transparency server received from May 9 to about May 13.
Okay.
And of course, very striking is the first VCM to have transmitted did it at 7:08.
Just 8 minutes after voting
closing. Well, COMELEC may have tried to justify that, saying that some of these precincts might have closed earlier than 7 p.m. But we reminded COMELEC that that is against your own general instruction. And in fact, it is illegal because if you close before the official time of 7 p.m., you might disenfranchise registered voters who may come about, let's say, 1 minute before 7. No?
That's right.
And in fact, in your own general instructions, if 7 p.m. comes and there is still a line up to 30 meters of the precinct, you cannot stop or you cannot close the voting. You have to let the last man in that line vote.
That's right.
No matter what it takes. No? So the general instructions are really to protect the right of the citizens to be able to vote.
Sec Eli, so that's one of the most recent events that happened, right?
Yes.
I think on May 23, the COMELEC published, on March 23 rather, sorry, the COMELEC published what they called the transmission logs.
Yes.
Number one, you pointed out that the earliest transmission was at 7:08.
7:08.
I think you also pointed out that, in fact, these were not transmission, but rather reception data. Can you explain that?
Well, reception data, and COMELEC also, they said this in their press statement, that really what they uploaded in their website are received data that are in their transparency server. Uh, how to detect, for a layman, transmission data is what would appear in your own cell phone when you give out a text message, an email,
All right.
that you have transmitted.
Okay.
So what appears in your cell phone would be the date time stamp of that transmitted data. That is the transmission logs.
Okay.
The reception data or log would be the one that will appear in if you were the recipient of my message, in your cell phone, the date, time that you received this. No? So those are two different things.
Just to belabor the point, why did you ask for transmission logs, and why is it a problem now that you only got reception?
Because we were actually questioning the data in the transparency server. As we said that this data is more or less unbelievable that in the first hour they could have received 20 million votes that they showed to the public at 8:02 p.m. of May 9. So we were asking COMELEC to show proof that there were actually transmission from VCM to account for the 20 million. They never answered us.
Is there a material difference between transmission and reception data?
There might be, and this because even if I send you a message, you might not receive that message exactly at the time that I send it. No?
Okay.
There are latency,
Okay.
but sometimes, and normally, it would be less than 1 second. No?
Okay. All right.
So you might receive the time in your cell phone says that you receive it 1 second
Okay.
later than the time. Our cell phones, by the way, are synchronized by the network. No, the same manner that all VCM and the servers that we used during the 2022 election are all synchronized to the nearest second. No?
So it's even possible that the 7:08 of, I think this is Marikina, right? 7:08 p.m. Reception, the transmission of that data could actually have been earlier. Could have been 7:07, for instance.
Yes, in fact, that is one example that we showed using the data that we got as a time received by the VCM. No? Fortunately, we were able to get a transmission report from one of the precinct, the Malanday Elementary School in Marikina, and it is clearly stated, this transmission report are given to the different poll watchers in that precinct, no? And we got one from a poll watcher, where it says that this VCM in Malanday Elementary School transmitted its election returns at 7:05.
7:05.
I'm sorry, 8:05.
8:05. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
of May 9, no? 8:05. When we check in that uploaded in the website of COMELEC that they show the public, that because all precincts have an ID. So we checked the ID of the transmission report, compared it with the ID that COMELEC showed the public in their March 25 uploading. It says there that the transparency server received that data, that election result, at 8:02.
okay.
So how
So,
can
so
parang
it went back in time.
Back to the future ang nangyari, no? In other words, I send you the message at 8:05, then you say that you received that message at 8:02. And that is precisely why we need the transmission lag. Because we are questioning the data that are in the transparency server.
Just to contextualize this, also among the recent events was the, you filed a petition for mandamus November 3
November 3 last year, yes.
last year. And then in January, the Supreme Court asked the respondents
To comment
to comment.
on our petition.
Has the COMELEC commented?
No, as to our knowledge, we don't know because we were not given any feedback. Usually, if a respondent put in his response as to whatever the Supreme Court ordered them to do, and the petitioner are given a copy of that answer of the respondent. No? So up to now, we haven't received yet any answer from COMELEC, but we know that Supreme Court gave us the request of COMELEC for a 30 days extension, which should have lapsed last or April 2.
But as of now,
we haven't
no response from COMELEC.
COMELEC, from the telcos, from JCOC, and from the COMELEC Advisory Council.
I think you've also been calling on the COMELEC since July for the transmission logs.
We did. We wrote COMELEC because precisely we want them to explain where that 20 million votes that was shown in the transparency server to the public at 8:02, where did that come from?
Yeah. But it was only in March.
23.
On March 23 that the COMELEC uploaded what turned out to be reception logs.
Yes.
What explains that move of the COMELEC? I mean, they waited for how many months is that? Yeah.
Almost 1 year. Well, it is strange, no? Because if they had the transmission logs, which they showed the public in a forum that they organized, COMELEC organized, no? On October 18 of 2022, no, last year. And in that forum, of course, they were giving the public that the election, 2022 election, was one of the fastest that we have seen, efficient, and there's no irregularities involved that even the so-called watchdogs, Namfrel and PPCRV, can attest to, no? But they produced a slide, a single slide in that presentation that showed accumulated VCM transmission. Precisely what we have been asking for since July 24, no? It is not detailed. It's just a graph of the rate that the VCM transmitted during election day.
I think their point was to show that the rate of transition was similar to the previous
yes, that was
elections.
the idea.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, except that in 2022 there are more VCM, so that's why the graph is higher than all the rest. No, there were more VCM employed during the 2022 election. That's why the graph of the 2022 election is higher than all the rest since 2010 when we started the automated election.
We'll have time a little bit later to focus on that particular slide that they presented.
Yes,
on
we
18.
were there because it was there that we saw that in that same slide, the VCM transmission peaked at the second hour. So how can the transparent server peak at the first hour with the 20 million at 8:02 when
their own
the VCM transmission has peaked in the first hour? In other words, it was that means that the transparent server was receiving more than what the VCM are transmitting. So we again question that. No? How can...
I'll get back to that, Sec. Eli. No?
Okay.
I just wanted to touch on the most important recent highlights. No?
Okay.
So the reason I asked why March 23 for the upload, is it possible it's connected to the impeachment threat from Colonel Udonio, which came out, what was it, March 21 or March 22?
Yeah, before that. Well, that is what people now believes, no? Because uh, Colonel Odonio was backed up by about 100 PMAers, no? Supporting him and asking COMELEC to give what, if they have nothing to hide, give Colonel Odonio what he is requesting.
Were you working with Colonel Donio, or
Yes, we are ready because
no? But when you filed the petition for mandamus, for instance, in November, were you?
no, we haven't met Colonel Odonio then. He came in around the last part of November because he knows that we have already filed, and well, he said that he also wrote COMELEC the similar letter to give the transmission lag, well, to the public or to him, no? 5 times, in fact, before we filed the mandamus petition. And COMELEC gave him the same answer that they gave us. That, no, so we are sorry we could not give you the transmission lag because it might violate the sanctity of the ballot, and that we have already given it to JCOC, the Joint Committee, the
Oversight.
Joint Oversight Committee, composed of congressmen and senators, and also we have given it to the COMELEC Advisory Council. We also wrote immediately these 2 government agencies, and I know for a fact that I was chairperson before of CAC, COMELEC Advisory Council, and we never asked for any transmission lags, no, during my time. So we never got any answers from any of them until now, no? And this is where, at this time, we're also, knowing that we have already written COMELEC, Colonel Odonio also wrote COMELEC, in fact, 5 times, before he threatened COMELEC that if you do not answer, I'm going to file a impeachment with the lower house of the Congress, no? And then it was backed up by as I've said, about 100 PMAers. Then, about 2 days, 3 days later, Chairman George Garcia announced to the public, okay, we will be publishing the transmission lags, no? That's what's very clear. And asked Colonel Donio to get it, pick it up on March 23 at COMELEC. I accompanied Colonel Odonio.
I see.
And we were there in the afternoon of March 23. We were given not the whole transmission lag, but the first hour, it is about a 1 rim, that's only for 1 hour. And then next day they uploaded the whole
To the website.
yes. So the first thing that we noticed upon receiving it is the date. The first VCM transmission was done 7:08.
Reception.
Reception. That is
Yeah.
shown in the reception of when first of all when we noted that the heading itself of those date timestamps was received. Date received. So that means reception. What we were asking for a long time is the transmission, no? Lags. And they have that. We know they have that. COMELEC has that because they showed it actually in the October 18 forum. No? So when we noted that, that it was actually reception, and then Colonel Odonio wrote them the next day. Ano ba kayo? Bakit we were asking for transmission lag? And what you gave us are reception lags. Talaga nagsulat si Colonel Odonio sa COMELEC. COMELEC did not answer him, but they went to a press conference where they said that, ano yan? Yan na yung that is the
It's the
lag,
same. That's what they're
the
saying.
lag of what the transparency server received And that's it. In other words, you cannot give anything more than that. That's how they answered in a press con. It was attorney, their spokesperson, attorney Laudienko, who said that. No? And it is left to that up to now. But when we notice 708, we said this is more unbelievable than the 20 million of the transparency server, because voting officially closed at 7, no? And the COMELEC gave specific instruction that the precincts could not close before 7 p.m. because it can disenfranchise a voter who comes in maybe a few seconds ahead of 7 p.m. No, so if the precinct cannot close before 7, it could not also transmit at 7:08 because upon closing, the teachers of the electoral board has to do 9 major tasks. That is also required by the general instructions of COMELEC. No?
And these are consecutive tasks.
Consecutive. You cannot, the machine itself will not allow you to go from task 1 to task 5 without undergoing 2, 3, 4.
Sure. Okay.
The machine will not allow that. So you have to go from task 1 to task 9. No? And when we had that time motion study way back in 2019, it was actually around 30 minutes from closing to transmission.
All right.
But now they have improved, as shown in the results, no? Because there was a training video that COMELEC did for instructing the teachers for the 2022 election. They produced a video and distributed this out, explaining all the how to conduct all the steps that they have to do after or during election, before election, during election and closing. No, all of that are in that video.
And from the training video, you computed
Yes.
that it would take about 19-20 minutes.
From closing, no, step 1 up to printing of the ballots, up to just before printing of the ballots, step 6, that takes already 6 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Then the printing of the ballots takes another 12 minutes. No, the longest is the printing of the 8 copies of the ballots. So 6 plus 12 is already 18. And then, of course, transmit. And that means that they have to, again, push buttons. And we gave them about a minute or so for that to transmit. And, of course, if the signal is poor, they have to look for a stronger signal in the precinct. No? But we assume that everything is ideal, no?
Yeah, that assumes that
It's the ideal.
but they know exactly what to do. They don't have to check the guidelines.
So in that ideal situation, it will be about 19 minutes.
Okay.
So the earliest transmission in the demonstration was actually done by a expert COMELEC demonstrator. No, he knows the system very well, but it took him about 19 minutes to complete task 1 to task 7. I'm sorry. He did not, of course, transmit because it was just a demonstration, but it involves pressing more buttons so that now, are you ready? Are you sure you can? In other words, there are questions that you have to answer, and they have to press that button. So that takes, in that video, no, done by a supposedly expert COMELEC, he did it in about 19 minutes. So if
So the earliest
the earliest time that the transmission coordinate based on that on the time and motion we got from that video would be around 719. 719, no? So how could the transparent server receive data from BCM at 708? And in fact, we actually were able to produce a BCM used in the Malanday Elementary School in Marikina, where the BCM log says
Was
that
earlier.
they transmitted the election result at 7:05. I'm sorry, 8:05.
But it was received at 8:02.
And in that transmission, in that reception logs that COMELEC uploaded in the we looked for the same ID, precinct ID, and found that the transparency server received it at 7:02. 8:02.
Sec Eli, is that necessarily a sign or proof of fraud? Is it? What about the argument that, well, you had precincts who, they were, all the voters had already voted. They decided to call it an early day. So that's a violation of the law.
That's a violation.
Very clear.
That was very clear.
But not necessarily fraud. How do you
of course,
answer that?
it can't necessarily fraud, no? But if you check now the list of received VCM from 7 to 719, there are 5,554 VCM who transmitted, no?
Okay.
So in other words, there are 5,554 VCM or precinct that transmitted before the the possible transmission that could be done if they exactly close at 7. So that means that these 5,554 these precincts or VCM closed before 7 p.m.
But 5,500 plus is what? Maybe 4% of the total number of
there are 107,000 precincts nationwide, no? So 5,000 would be about 5 over 100 or 1/20th. 1/20th. But that's not the point, no? In other words, there were 5,500 precincts who violated the law. And nothing was done about it. In other words, there was no investigation and everything like that, no? Because that's unusual, no? How could, having given strict instruction that you cannot close, then more than 5,000 violated it on election day. So these are something that COMELEC has to explain. But even given that 5,000 closed before 7 p.m., still, we got this single proof, no? That there was a precinct that did not violate anything because they transmitted at 8:05, which in the list that they gave us on March 23, that precinct was received at 8:02.
Is it possible for the COMELEC to get back to you and say that was just a typo? It wasn't really 8:02, it was 8:12 or something.
No, the list that they gave us has what they call the hashtags, no?
Okay.
In other words, in that hashtag is the assurance that all in that page, every page has a hashtag. It is an assurance that what is written in that page has been checked and cannot be a typo because actually these are not manually typed, no? Line by line.
These are extracted from
It is copied and pasted from a
database.
no? You do not make typo if you just copied and paste.
Okay.
And then the hashtag of that page in the source is similar to the hashtag in that document that they presented. No? So they cannot say that.
This issue, no, about transmission is already a very compelling issue. No? I mean, it's a question that we must all ask if we are all interested in election integrity.
Yes.
But this is not how you started, right? You started and then you got together with Mr. Lagman and Mr. Ysaac because of another statistical or numerical anomaly. How did you start?
The 20 million that was shown to the public at 8:02 immediately struck me as very, very improbable, statistically, if not impossible. No? Because in that first hour, 7 to 8, there is that 9 tasks that all precinct have to do. And, you know, with my experience, that task took 30 minutes in 2019. So that means that they could have started only transmitting at 7:30. So 7:30 to 8, they were able to transmit 20 million to the transparent server. No? That is how it is presented. But between 8 to 9, where there would be more VCM already ready to transmit because they have done the 9 instructions in the first hour, suddenly the counting dropped to 13.2 million. So why were not they able to, in other words, if they were able to sustain the 20 million count, they should at least have the same count in the second hour. So the total would be about 40, no? But
it struck you as improbable because of the sheer volume. So between at 8:02, you saw 20 million votes had been counted, and you thought, well, this is too fast.
No, actually we thought that, it's the first time it happened in our history, no? That in the first hour, the number of votes counted in 1 hour is in the first hour. Usually, in fact, in the graph shown, the first hour will not be so much. The peak would appear in the second and third hour. No, that even in the history, election history done in other countries, especially let's say America, the number of votes counted in the first hour is always less than that in the second hour because preparation have to be made and things like that. So this is the first time that happened. That in the first hour, that was the peak of the count. No, so that is what made us, kind of.
What did you think it should have been?
Well, based on the second hour, it could be about only 13 million in the first hour, no? And then sustained another 13 million in the second hour. And then once more VCM transmit, then when it has reached the 50% of VCM transmission, then of course it's going to go down, no? Because less and less VCM are now transmitting.
I just want to be clear. So the source of the information, 20 million votes, this was broadcast on media.
Yes.
Based on the transparency server count.
Yes.
So at 8:02, the networks and news organizations were reporting about 20 million votes had been counted. Has that ever been disputed by the COMELEC after the fact?
Well, it took them up to March to come up with the figures that we have been asking. The March 23 figures really showed that 20 million was counted at 8:02.
But in October 18, there was a presentation where they said it peaked in the second hour.
Yes.
So obviously 20 million is higher than 13.
Yes.
So
they
13 couldn't be the peak. Yeah.
They contradicted what they said. And in fact, we were expecting that they showed the transmission lag that was the basis of that accumulated VCM transmission. They have that. They plotted it. No, it is their. It is Comelec who plotted that graph.
So, one of those two things must be inaccurate. That graph of October 18,
Yeah.
or the March 23
That is
upload.
what is why this is funny, John. Because first, Comelec showed the public the transparency server, no, on May,
On May,
9 to May 13, where they counted 20 million, no, and then we showed that that is well questionable. And then on October 18, they showed a graph. We have been asking for the VCM transmission since that time, no? Which they showed on October 18 as a graph. No? But in that graph, it showed there that it peaked in the second hour. So we questioned them again. How could that? How could the VCM transmission peak at the second hour when the received VCM transmission in the transparency server peaked at the first hour? So that means that the transparency server was was counting votes that has not yet been transmitted by the VCM. So they kept silent, no, until March 23 when they showed that list of so-called transmission logs that now tallies with the transparency server. So parang nangyari. And did you know that they deleted all the data in the transparency server immediately after the election? And all data that were copied by reporters who were covering the transparency server account, no, during the 4 days, they could not leave the premises until PPCRV personnel delete, no, those data on their laptop. Personal laptop nila yun, in their tablets, no? So why do they have to delete? In other words, they should be proud of that. So nawala lahat yun. And it reappeared on March 23. So parang may circle of deception, eh. That's what we call it. They showed something to the public on May, then showed the public another graph on October 18, and when questioned, they stuck to kasi kuwan na sila eh. They could no longer deny that there were 20 million shown the public. So they went back to that in the March 23 listing.
I'm glad you raised the point of yung erasures, transparency servers, and
It was deleted,
so on. The deletion and so on. Because, in fact, if we were to add context here, I think there would be two types of context we can add. There would be the quote-unquote positive context, meaning it reinforces your argument that there was some major irregularities.
Yes.
No? In other words, there were things that happened before that strengthened the argument. For instance, printing of ballots without anyone witnessing.
Configuring the SD card without any witness.
Yeah, I mean that was they were reported on before, but now in the context of what you're saying, they add to the context in a positive sense. They reinforce. But there's also a negative context. For instance, surveys, right? I don't think you're saying that Pulse Asia was.
No, we're not saying that.
That's right, or colluded, right? But that would be the kind of context that would negate some or all of your argument. How do you make sense of these contexts?
Surveys are not the election. No?
Yes.
Because if surveys are so accurate, why do we have to do elections? So surveys are not election. What we saw is that the election is being copied because of the surveys. And this did not happen just this election. This has been happening in at least the past two elections. No? They come up with a survey, and things like that. Now, I've been with organization that can analyze surveys. No? For example, let's say Polls Asia do not actually employ in their company people who they send out. They are contractuals. No, you cannot hire an army of surveyors permanently in your company. No, so every time that there is a survey, that a project that has to be done, then they start. So if I were, if I were, let's say, a intelligence officer who is for, trying to manipulate the minds of the people, I would put in people as part of those contractual, no? And then, in other words, I could feed. I'm not saying that this happened, but that could have happened because for the past 3 elections, there was a survey conducted, and then the results of the election are very accurate to those surveys.
It could also be that, in fact, that the surveys are scientific, that they are actually...
Well, of course. Or the election was manipulated. So that is what exactly we are here now, John. No? For us to be convinced that the election was not manipulated and actually conform to the survey, show us, be transparent. No? How could the 20 million come up? There must be a corresponding lag from VCM, from transmission of lag, that would show the people that there were really 20 million. How hard is that to show? Why until now, they have not shown us. So in fact, very easy. They said in the 7 or 8. Why couldn't they just show a transmission report that say that this VCM transmitted at 7 or 8? None. All they showed are what were received.
Well, we're running long, but I have a few more questions,
Okay.
Sec Eli, if you don't mind. No? How do you reconcile the fact that the transmitted ERs from the VCMs match 99% of the manually counted ERs?
Yes. Very easy. PPCRB manually counted the election returns from almost all precincts. No? Where did these ERs come from? These election returns come from? They were printed by the VCM. And these ERs have already been transmitted to the transparent server. So what the transparent server counted will be just manually counted by the thousands of PPCRB volunteers. And it will, in other words, what we are trying to dig deeper are the votes inside this VCM. Are they really the votes by the voters? No? Of course, Comelec can say, yes, we had a random manual audit. Another watchdog, this is the Namfrel and Lente, did that. No? But let me go back again to the first to the PPCRB count. So kung yan din ang na-receive, mas mabilis ang makina, di ba, to count all of this. It took more than a month, mga 2 months pa nga for volunteers to actually count what the machine already counted in 1 day, actually. But PPCRB could have independently verified whether the ERs that they got from Comelec, yung pinrint ng VCM, are actually the votes inside that VCM. How? Mayroong voters resibo, may resibong voters, no, yung VVPATs. In other words, they could have requested Comelec kasi tatapon na yan. Can we say that? And then actually count the number of votes for president, vice president, and compare it with the ER. They were not allowed to do that. no? Doon lang kayo magdidepende sa binigay namin sa inyo. Now, in the random manual audit, because sabi nila, the random manual audit will do that. In the random manual audit, they selected 752 precincts randomly all over the country, and both these ballots, no, inside their ballot box, to Diamond Hotel, 757 ballot boxes, and they were counted there for about 2 months actually, no, manually counting the ballots inside it, and of course it jived, no. But we question, who can assure the voting public that when these ballot boxes were transferred from, let's say, as far as Mindanao to Diamond Hotel, who can assure the voting public that these votes were not tampered? Wala. We have to trust COMELEC that it was not tampered. The watchdog did not accompany the ballot boxes, di ba? In mga masiselang kwan, just to transfer a ballot box from the precinct to the municipal hall, about a few kilometers, maraming pinapaligiran yan ng kwan. But this time, who in Namfrel, for example, accompanied that ballot box from Davao, let's say, to Diamond Hotel, and the seal, hindi nila winitis how it was sealed, no? The seal are just plastic, plastic straps that which can easily be cut and replaced. So those are the questions na if nobody can assure the voting public that these ballot boxes were not tampered from wherever they came from to Diamond Hotel, walang integrity na itong Diamond Hotel count.
Sec. Eli, your petition with the Supreme Court is really just to compel the COMELEC and also the telcos to preserve the
and
data.
not alter.
And not alter the data.
Yes.
Right? But what is I hate to use the term end game because this is not a chess game, but what's the long-term objective? What do you want to happen?
The objective actually is just to find, we as registered voters, concerned citizens, are asking this question. And we have the right to know whether our election was not rigged. No? And COMELEC is mandated by law to show that it was all transparent. But the way they are acting now, there is no transparency at all. In fact, they are hiding things that we have been asking for, that they already showed the public, no, on October 18. Why can't they not show us those transmission lags? Why do they keep on going back to the transparency server, which precisely we are questioning? That is the whole thing, no? So COMELEC first has to be transparent on this, no? And the only way that they can do that is show us the transmission lag, verified in the what we call details records of the telcos, no? Because it was the telcos who transmitted from VCM to the transparent server. They have this. In other words, is there a record in the telco that will say that there was transmission from any VCM for that matter at 7:08? Ang dali yun, di ba?
What if the COMELEC is unable or unwilling to heed your requests?
Well,
what's the next step?
We don't know the next step to that. That will already depend not on us anymore, no? In other words, we can only show this, and if we are not satisfied, I'm sure the people also will not be satisfied.
You gave me at the start of the program something just hot off the press, no? So you're distributing these
flyers.
forward,
Explain to the people why we think that the election was not transparent, and it could be fraudulent if they could not explain what we have been asking for, no?
And I see that the data actually comes from COMELEC data or
All
public
data that we have been presenting to the public came from COMELEC. No?
and yet they don't adapt.
And then they don't adapt. They, in fact, put in other, saying that these are transmission lag when in fact they are reception lags.
Sec Eli, I'm afraid we ran out of time. This is a very important issue. I will be doing follow-up
Yes.
programs on this. Retired General and former DICT Secretary Eliseo Rio, thank you very much. Your group has raised unsettling but also fundamental questions about the nature of the public square. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nery. And thank you very much to Rappler for accommodating us. We are not being covered by mainstream media.
Well, we are mainstream media, and it took some time, but you are being covered now in opinion pages of
now and then,
Philippine
yes.
Star, The
Yes,
Inquirer,
yes.
also
Darwin's Bundok mostly, yeah.
in Rappler. But thank you.
Thank you very much for accommodating me. We'll keep.
That's it for us tonight. The next step for engaged citizens is always to take a more active part in rebuilding our democracy. See you in the public square. This is John Nery. Thank you and good night.